So now that we have the intake manifold off, we're gonna go ahead and remove the spark plugs and the connections to the spark plugs. So once you remove your connections for the spark plugs, go ahead and disconnect these vacuum hoses right here. That's for the PCV valve right there, and that is the vacuum line that goes from this valve cover to the other valve cover. Also, you want to remove a bracket that is holding down the wiring harness for the spark plug connections. It's held down by a bolt that's in the back of the valve cover. So that's actually going to be a 12 millimeter. So just go ahead and pick up your harnesses out of the way, and then just get your ratchet. And you guys can't see what I'm doing, but you'll feel what I'm talking about if you do this. It's going to be like right here. So it looks like that would have been a 12 millimeter holding down that bracket, but it looks like somebody rounded that out. So I'm just moving it to the side, like that. It's thin metal, so you can bend it, but just be careful. We're gonna remove the coils right here, or I don't know if they're coils or just spark plug wires, but they look like coils to me on this side, and on that side they look like they're just regular wires. So let's just remove these. Notice that these are not tightened down a lot, so when you install these, don't overkill them because it is plastic and it'll break on you. Gotta pick that up right now. Once you remove you guys' bolts, go ahead and just remove these coils. I think that's what they are because they don't look like regular wires to me. So just go ahead and remove them. I don't know when was the last time that they changed the spark plugs on this car. Like I said, this car has about 230,000 miles, so I'm just gonna go ahead and change them. Also, the valve cover is leaking a lot on this side, and might as well replace the valve cover if you're doing the spark plugs on this car. After we remove our spark plug connections and our coils, let's go ahead and remove the hose right here for this PCV valve. Just go ahead and remove it out of the way. Now, I actually replaced this on this car about 2 years ago, but I'm not going to change it now because I don't have the part. But if you do need to change the PCV valve, this is the location. There's only one on this car because, as you guys can see, there's this hose that goes from one of these valve covers to the other. So this is how this is getting vented, through this hose right here. So just an FYI for you guys. If you guys need to change the PCV valve, that's where it's going to be. Alright, let's get this out of the way. Go ahead and remove your wires for the spark plugs out of the way, because we're going to be removing the valve cover and you don't want anything to fall in there. So this one's pretty much the same thing. Go ahead and remove your connections right here for this vacuum line right here. Remove that. Also remove this. I mean, you don't have to remove it, but I'm gonna just remove it so that it doesn't get in my way when I'm installing the valve cover. And then after you do that, go ahead and remove your spark plug wires right here. The boots for the spark plugs, remove them. After you remove all the hoses up here, go ahead and remove the spark plug wires. And let's get them out of the way. Now that we have our spark plug wires out of the way, let's go ahead and remove the valve cover. So in order to remove that, there's a series of 10mm bolts that go around the valve cover, and there's some in here as well. So go ahead and remove those. I know that for this side of the valve cover, there's gonna be a stud that is behind the timing cover right here. So let me see if I do need to remove further over here, because like I said, there's probably gonna be one stud right here. So let's go ahead and see what happens, okay? All right, so let's just go ahead and remove these. The studs in the middle are going to be longer than the ones around the valve cover, so just keep that in mind that the big ones go in the middle. And by looking at this, I believe there's going to be one right here. It doesn't look like by loosening up the bolts up here, you'll be able to get access to the bolt that's down there. So the only solution that I can see from here is either to drill in a hole and get the bolt out that way, or loosening up your power steering hose and the belt and moving that out of the way, and maybe moving this a little bit up and then have access to that bolt. So I really don't want to drill holes into the timing cover, so I'm just gonna go ahead and remove the power steering pump out of the way. Second thought, I'm just gonna use a razor blade and cut this part out, because I don't know why Kia would do this. This is such a stupid idea. I mean, the only way to remove this is, you know, to remove the bolt that's holding this to the lower timing cover, and to remove that bolt, you need to remove the whole front of the engine, and I'm not gonna do that. So this is what I'm gonna do. I pretty much made a hole right here by just cutting a piece of it off. I know it's not the best thing to do because this is a timing cover for the timing belt, but I need to get that bolt out of there. So I mean, if you guys have a better option than this, let me know, and I'll admit that I messed up, but we do need to remove that bolt. Once you have the bolt all the way loosened up, go ahead and get like a magnet and fish it out. Now that we have everything out of the way, we can remove the valve cover. If it doesn't want to come off, you can go ahead and get your flathead and just pry in between the valve cover and the back of this metal piece right here, and just pry it up. But for the most part, it should just come off. So let's go ahead and remove it. This is a close-up of the inside of the engine. It doesn't look bad for a car that has 230,000 miles. In my opinion, that looks pretty good. So let's go ahead and remove the other side as well. So now we're gonna do this side. This side's pretty much the same. Go ahead and loosen up all the 10mm bolts going around the valve cover. The only difference that I found is that there's a bolt that holds down this hose right here that you need to remove. Also, you might need to remove this hose right here because it's kind of in the way, and when you're installing this, you don't want it to be in your way. So go ahead and remove it. Go ahead and move this hose out of the way, and with that removed, you should be able to remove the valve cover. Now let's remove our spark plugs. So get a spark plug socket and let's go ahead and remove those. You want to get a spark plug socket that has a magnet in it, so that when you remove them and you install them, it doesn't fall. So let's go ahead and remove these. So something that I've noticed is that not all of these are tightened down equally. So when we tighten these back down, we're going to torque them so that we can make sure that they're all tightened down as equal. Alright, once you remove your spark plugs, go ahead and take a look at them. You can learn a lot from checking your spark plugs. So I don't even know what kind of spark plugs these are. Let's see if the camera can focus, but I looked it up, and I guess this car's supposed to have NGK iridiums or double platinum. So we're gonna go ahead and install those NGKs on this car, and let's hope that it gives us better gas mileage. All right, we're gonna go ahead and do the same thing to this side. Go ahead and clean off your mating surfaces for the valve cover. The same with the spark plug tubes right here. Go ahead and make sure that everything's nice and clean. And we're gonna go ahead and do that on both sides. Clean the valve cover mating surfaces. I like using a razor blade and just pretty much putting it straight down against the surface right here and just scraping off any debris. After we remove our spark plugs, go ahead and install your new ones. I'm using NGK iridiums. So before we install the spark plugs, we want to put some automatic transmission fluid, or if you have some anti-seize, you can go ahead and put them on the threads of the spark plugs. When installing the spark plugs, make sure that you guys have a spark plug socket or a magnet or something that you can put the spark plugs in, because you just don't want to drop them in there. It can bend the electrode, and you might have to do this all over again if that happens. So just use a spark plug socket to be safe. With the torque wrench set to 15 foot-pounds, let's torque these down. Go ahead and repeat the same process on this side. Torque them down to 15 foot-pounds. Spark plugs installed. Let's go ahead and install our valve cover. Okay, so now that we're done cleaning the surface area of the engine block, we're gonna go ahead and clean our valve cover itself before we install our valve cover gasket. And if you guys are wondering what kind of gasket I'm using the Velcro gasket. This is about 80 bucks for both. So now we need to install the valve cover gasket on the valve cover. Before you do that, make sure that all the channels here in the valve cover are nice and clean. What you can do is get like a rag and just clean them out really good, so that there's no leaks or anything like that. Once we have our valve cover nice and clean, go ahead and get your gaskets and start placing them in the valve cover. I'm not going to be using RTV because it's not needed at all. The Valve Pro company or the website says that you're not even supposed to be using RTV in their gaskets, and it makes sense. So just, I mean, you can go and do this how you want to, but I'm not going to be using RTV. I believe it just makes a mess, and it's not needed. Let's install our gaskets. Alright, so for the spark plug tube gasket, it's pretty self-explanatory. This can only go in one way. So the ones that have like the edge right here, they need to be facing down. So, alright, so let's just get this on here. And you want to make sure that your valve cover channels are nice and dry, so that this doesn't slip when you're installing it on the engine, or it doesn't fall off. So alright, now let's get the gasket for the circumference of the valve cover. So it's pretty much the same thing. Make sure that the grooves are going towards the channels of the valve cover, and just walk it around. Looks like we're getting some rain here. When you're installing it, make sure that you're pressed down on these corners right here, so that the gasket can be seated nice and tight on here. Okay, so now that we have one valve cover down, let's do the other one. As you guys can see on this one, they used RTV to hold the gasket in place. So I mean, it just makes a mess and it's not needed. So this gasket's pretty hard, so it was leaking on both sides, so that's why I'm replacing it. Alright, so the same thing with this one. Just go ahead and clean the valve cover off, get any RTV off of it, so that there's no issues as far as it leaking in the future. Once you have your valve cover gaskets ready to go ahead and get your guys' studs and prepare those as well. In this kit, these came with some rubber grommets that we need to install. So all you're pretty much is doing is removing the old grommet off of the stud right here, and the orientation is like this. So they had to be facing down. The metal part is on top and the rubber piece on the bottom. So you just pretty much line it up and then just push them in, just like that, and that's all you need to do. So do that to all of them. Make sure you keep your bolts in order. All the small short bolts go for the one on the driver's side, and the ones that have different sizes go on the right side to the passenger. So just keep that in mind. Give the valve cover surfaces a nice clean with some compressed air, so you can get all the dirt and RTV off of the surface area. So just, I mean, if you guys have any compressed air, you guys can do this. If not, I mean, it's not gonna kill you, but you can clean it if you want. Alright, let's install the valve cover. Make sure that everything is out of the way so that you don't get the valve cover gasket all messed up. So alright, let's install this. Don't tighten anything down because there's a special torque pattern that you need to follow. Also, you need to torque these about to 5 foot-pounds each. So the torque pattern that you need to follow is as follows. So this bolt all the way over here is going to be first. So that's first, second right here, third, fourth all the way over here at the end, 5th down here, 6 all the way up here, 7th in the middle, 8th below it, 9, 10 right here, and 11. So you need to follow that torque pattern. Also, you need to torque these bolts to 5 foot-pounds. So let's begin tying these bolts down. I'm just gonna hand tighten them for now, and then I'm gonna go back and torque them. Install the valve cover onto this side now. Make sure that there's nothing around the valve cover that is stopping it from going in. Like I said, if you don't use RTV, you should be fine. Just make sure that your valve cover is fully dry so that it doesn't slip off. So for this side, there's also a torque pattern, which is the opposite of the other side. But on this side, the first bolt is going to be the one by the timing cover right here. So get a magnet and just screw it in there first. And be careful not to drop this in there because it can fall down into the timing assembly and it can get caught somewhere. So basically the same pattern as before: first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th. So do that in that order. The ones that are in the middle right here are going to be longer bolts. So keep that in mind. So all these four, this one, and this one, and this one, are going to be longer bolts than the other ones that will go around. So just keep that in mind. Once you're done torquing everything down, go back again and torque this one and this one again. I guarantee that there's going to be some of them that are not torqued down correctly because the way you're tying things down, one side is going to get loosened up. So just go back and retorque everything. So once you have your spark plug coils and spark plug wires in, go ahead and get this hose and put it back where it goes. Also, don't forget to fasten it down with the fastener that it came out of. Now let's go ahead and put everything back together. Get your PCV hose, put it back in the PCV valve. Let's install this hose that goes from one side of the valve cover to the other. This one went underneath all the electricals, so just keep that in mind. Let's install our spark plug wires back in along with the coil packs on this side. Go ahead and install the fasteners for the coil packs. Don't over tighten these because it's made out of plastic and you can't break it. You can use a 1/4-inch ratchet and just tighten them down snugly and then give it like half of a quarter of a turn. Before we put the planet back on top of the engine, I'm gonna go ahead and put some black electrical tape around these wires because I don't want them to rip. now we're gonna install our intake plenum back on the car. So make sure that everything is away from the middle right here, because that's where it's gonna go. Go ahead and remove your rag from the center away so that you don't get any debris in the engine. If you're gonna be replacing your gasket, this will be the time to do it. For me, I'm gonna leave it on because I don't have another one with me, and this one's made out of metal, so it's not broken anywhere, so it should be fine. You want to line up your studs and then just drop it down. Alright, so once you have your plenum in, go ahead and tighten the first bolt right here and then do the one in the back first. After you do that, you want to tighten down the middle one and then go from the middle to the out. So this one will be this one, and it'll be this one. And then you go back to this one, and then this one will be last. And you want to torque these down to about 15 foot-pounds as well. Alright, so let's torque them down to 15 foot-pounds.